And now with Frescos, like I love this stuff. Like I feel lucky that I landed here because to make the best Jamaica that you can find in the market in a can, I can die happily.
Yeah.
Like I did a service to Latinos, you know what I mean?
Welcome to LatinX Can, a podcast showcasing Latinx professionals who turn their dreams into realities. I'm your host, La Doctora Jenire Flores Delgado, and today I'm here with Juan Ignacio Stewart, an entrepreneur who is bringing the foods and flavors of Latin America to the mainstream in the U.S. by sharing it with the world and fighting in the tank at Shark Tank. And he's here to tell you, sí se puede, my friends, sí se puede. Juan Ignacio Stewart, welcome to LatinX Can.
Hey, thank you so much, Jenny there. Really nice to be here.
I'm super excited to talk to you today. This weekend, we had the third celebration of my birthday at home, and I still had Frescos Naturales in my fridge, and I pulled it out and I gave it to everybody, and I mixed it with, my favorite right now is mixing with passion fruit rum. And I'm coming up with a few cocktail recipes. So I'm excited for people to learn the story about Frescos Naturales and your story as well.
Oh, awesome. Thank you. Thanks for sharing. Appreciate it.
So let's start by talking about your story and where your story begins.
Yeah, I guess I have multiple nationalities. My dad's from here in the States. He's from Colorado. That's why I eventually came here. But I grew up in Guatemala, which is where my mom is from. My dad went to Guatemala in the early 70s and stayed there 30 years of his life. And my mom is from Antigua, Guatemala. And that's the place I call home. That's where I identify my roots from. And I moved to the States when I was 17. So I'm 40. I just turned 41. So I've been here now probably more than I've been down there. But
right.
I still, at least for me, like my identity is still mixed for sure, but it's very grounded in being Guatemalteco, somebody from Guatemala and Antigua, and the people there, the traditions.
Yeah, I hear your story, right? Like for me, I left Venezuela when I was turning 18. So, and then now I'm 36. I just turned 36 a couple of weeks ago, and I'm at the point where I've been away from home longer than I was at home, right? Yeah. But those first years and the memories and the experiences that we have during those formative years of our lives, they really make a difference, don't they?
Yeah, absolutely.
And so when you came here at the age of 17, I wonder, what was that motivation for you to come to the States? And how do you start your life out here?
Well, I had family. Definitely, like my dad's side of the family was here in Colorado. So I came and I had already come to visit as a kid growing up. In Guatemala, the land of eternal spring, the school year starts in January and it goes till October, right? In a place where we don't have like the crazy time change like here, of course you would start the year, the first month of the year. So those last 2.5 months, we would alternate with my sister and come and visit my grandparents and pick up a little bit on work on our English a little bit. My dad always spoke to me in English since I was a kid in Guatemala. We were the strange ones.
Yeah.
But that was always really helpful. So I had a foundation when I came here. There was an idea of what I thought it was going to be like. And then, of course, then there's the reality.
Right.
But I had a support system. And I left Guatemala at 17 in the middle of my junior year of school because I got kicked out of school. I attended a Catholic school and I didn't really do any bad things, but I was somebody that questioned a lot. I got in problems in a religion class, asking too many questions. challenging things. So yeah, I got kicked out of school in the middle of the year. My father was planning on returning to the States. That was 1999. He was thinking of coming back because he was getting older, wanted to have better medical care, was having difficulty finding work in Guate, and thought that he could find more work here. And so in 2 weeks, the decision was made. It was like, okay, just move to the States now and start the new
The
semester
school there.
in Colorado in August. So that's, yeah.
Wow. Questioning authority doesn't really go along with the Catholic Church very
No.
much. So,
Yeah. No, but yeah.
yeah, I didn't study in like religious schools, but yeah, I mean the Catholic Church is very rigorous institution, and your flow is more like, you know, I don't know how to describe it. It's very like questioning things and laissez-faire vibe, you know. So I can see how that probably was in the line.
Yeah. So there's things that didn't align with me, and yeah, things that I thought were, there's a lot, I don't know, don't want to get too into it, but you know, hypocrisies. You say this, but you do that, you know,
Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah, for
But
sure.
it ended up being a really, really good thing for me. I came to the States very, very ignorant, really. Even though I went to a good school in Antigua, I hadn't ever written an essay in my life. And I didn't realize that until I got here and I had to write one. The educational levels were very, very different. For example, I had a difficult year that integrating that first year and didn't do very good in school because in Guatemala, we didn't take our own notes. It was dictation. They would tell you what
Yeah,
to write, right?
yeah.
Okay, write this, and you would write. And the act of critical thinking wasn't really developed in school. It was in my family, it was developed at home. And it was developed also on the streets with my friends, you know what I
Right.
mean? Music, art wakes that up in you and makes you, you know, at the time I was into punk, rock and roll. That makes
Yeah.
you question things. But coming here, it was the first time I actually, oof, it was in a U.S. history class that I had to take a year U.S. history to graduate. So, and I had to write an essay on something the United States was involved in the 20th century. And that was the first time that I read a book about the CIA intervention in Guatemala and the overthrow of our democratically elected president, Jacobo Arbenz. And oh my God, it just opened up like so much. It's like you read one book, it shatters what your conception of reality had been, and then you start reading more. And I think I've definitely learned more about Guatemala sort of being here than when I was there. And I try to go every year if I can at the end of the year in December to visit my mom and grandparents. Well, now just my grandmother, but my cousins as well. I
Yeah.
try to take my son every
Yeah.
year if I can. Definitely when
Right.
he was little, I was like, if we can't live down there, I'm going to take you there.
Oh.
We would go for like 4 weeks. I knew that the experience of being immersed in Guatemala was way more valuable than 2 weeks at elementary school or middle school or
Right.
something.
Right.
I was very good for him. And I think he also understood me more after going there and being like, oh, this is why he's like this, you know. Things like in Latin America, I think your courtesy and your, ¿cómo se dice? Modales,
Manners, right?
your manners. Your
Yeah.
manners are huge, is very important. It shows a lot about you. And in a place where sometimes you don't have other resources like material resources, educational resources, what you can have is like excellent manners and a great awareness. And that's huge. I can really help you. And I always drove that into Joaquin. I was like, you say hello all the time, acknowledge everybody, especially if they're adults, you know what I mean, older people than you, and engage with them. Don't be afraid. Something that his American friends were not at all doing.
Yeah. Interesting. Juan Ignacio, when we first got here, we like started talking. You talked to me about like all the things you've done. You're a person of many traits, right? You initially studied cinematography and video production. You worked as a teacher. You had a job as a cab driver. Now you're a business owner and an entrepreneur. And the sense that I get from you really is just this hardworking immigrant that is looking to keep his head above water, right? What was that process of migrating to the States, even though, you know, like you're from here, your family is from here, but you still had to basically create your life here and just, you know, keep your head above water.
It was so valuable to come here. It was all of a sudden you get access to everything. The United States is the richest country in the world. And from where you and I come from, and what we don't have libraries like they have here at all. I never played in a grass soccer field ever.
Wow.
We played in dirt. All these little things. And then again, like I said, the access to education was huge. I think for me, the political awakening and my understanding of like, oh, this is why Guatemala is like this. Actually, my first interest in school was international affairs. That's what I went to school for. And I added the film part because I thought I could use this visual medium to tell the world about the revolution and about what's going on, So I got 2 degrees, international affairs. I was interested in working in development. I never wanted to really stay here in the States. I thought I would stay here 7 years at the most. And I wanted to go back to Guatemala and work in development, human rights stuff. But I became a young father when I started school. So that changed things. And I was very in love with my son's mother. We were both very in love. We ended up getting married for a little bit. And then in the middle of school, we separated. And that also changed things. I dropped a school job I had and I picked up a cab driving job. I needed to make more money. And also started thinking, well, and I finished school. I was successful at video production and post-production. I got some awards while I was in school. And I didn't want to continue doing a master's in international affairs because of school debt.
Yeah.
I had taken on loans when I went to school. I had like $35,000. And so I was like, I don't want more debt. And so I decided to pursue production, video production. And I didn't have my own equipment. I actually participated in a city program where they helped you if you raised some money, took some financial literacy classes. They would match up to 4 times what you made up to $750. So basically, they would give you $3,000 if you saved $750, which I did.
Okay.
I bought my first camera with that, and I built my first computer with that money, editing machine. And I started doing post-production work. I've been an entrepreneur more, but not by choice. It's because life, that's the way it turned out. I just moved to Denver last month, but I've been living in Boulder, which is where my father was from. And I've been living there for 20 years and it's expensive. I wanted to stay close to my son and be there when he was growing up. When I finished college, he was like 5 years old, 6, and he was the most important thing, So I tried to develop my video production first and on the side, and I would also drive taxi to pay for the bills.
Yeah.
Sometimes I would have more work in video, so I would just do that. But if you didn't have work, sometimes work was 3 days, sometimes it was 3 months. Then I would drive a taxi, and that was before Uber and Lyft started.
Yeah.
I also applied to many jobs in Boulder with the city. My mom was a social worker, and it's something that I've always been interested in as well. So I applied to those kind of jobs, thinking working with the Latino community, working with youth. But I never, if you don't have a master's and there's 300 people applying for that job, you don't even pass HR, even if you might be the most qualified person. So I never landed a solid job with the city, or I was teaching after school video production classes with youth, Latino youth.
Yeah.
Eventually I got 3 schools that I was working with, and I was like, okay, I actually fell in love with education. Education has been the most helpful useful I've ever felt as a human being, besides being a father, was being a teacher. It was really cool. And I want to continue that someday in the future. Education is very important. I was always hustling, and I would do night classes, computer literacy classes with all the moms, Mexican moms at my son's elementary school. Don't have the computer literacy that we expect here. Right. I knew that I could teach those classes. They didn't pay a lot, but I could do them. So it's always been a mix of what is important for me and trying to find that and making enough to get by and provide a good life for me and my son. But when Uber and Lyft started, cab driving work went from 25 an hour to like 15 an hour. And I was already tired of that job. It can be dangerous. I would drive like 6 p.m. to 6 a.m. usually overnight, and drive the drunks at night, and then look for airport rides in the morning. it was just exhausting. It was tough on the body. I wanted something different, and it was my mom's hot sauce that
Yeah.
pushed me into the farmers markets. I didn't go to the farmers markets in Boulder because they were expensive.
Yeah.
I had food stamps for many years, and so it didn't make sense. Now they do take food stamps. It's really
At
great.
the
Now
farmer's
they
market.
take them and they give you extra on top of that, which is awesome.
Oh, wow.
But a friend of mine, my roommate actually, would go there and would always say, hey, you should take your hot sauce to the farmer's market. And he would talk about success stories. I've been lucky to be in Boulder. Boulder is a place where the natural food industry has always thrived. That's where Justin's peanut butter comes from. Lara Bar, Easy, actually, the beverage was also made there. It's a small town with quite wealthy with a lot of disposable income, so they can support these small businesses and then launch them out there. So yeah, I thought, hey, my mom's hot sauce is better than peanut butter for sure. So so one day I was like, okay, let's just do the math. And so I bought the ingredients, made a batch, divided, see how much I got, how many bottles I would fill, did the cost, and it would roughly come out at like $1 a bottle.
Okay.
So that seemed reasonable to me. I was like, I can sell this, I'm sure, $6 a bottle at the farmer's market. I could do that. Let's try. And at the time I was teaching in 3 schools, so I didn't quit my multiple day jobs. It was one farmer's market Wednesday afternoons. It wasn't even the big Saturday market, but it took off like crazy, Jenny. It was selling amazing. Like I spent $200 on 1 week and made $1,000 at the farmer's market. I was like, wow, this is incredible. Let's do it again.
Yeah.
And that's how it got started. I never in my life imagined I would be making and selling hot sauce or drinks now, ever. I didn't want to be an entrepreneur, but it's life, you have to figure it out. And that's the story of immigrants, you know what I mean? Right there.
That's what I was going to say, is that resourcefulness, right? It's like you left your home, you left everything you know, right? You, in your case, you had some support system here, but still not the same. And you came and you figured out how to keep your head above water, right? And it's whatever it needs to do, because you've fought so hard already, right? That what may seem like an obstacle, a huge obstacle for somebody who's never faced adversity before, it's like, this is just a bump in the road. I can make it. I can get through it. And like you're saying, it's the story of immigrants, right? Like, I mentioned this to you earlier, is like I had a friend that was asking me about the podcast when we were initially starting. And he asked me, like, all these people that you're interviewing, they all have these stories of resilience, of like having struggled and coming through and making it on the other side of the road and just fighting through it. And it's like, is that something you screen for? And I was like, I don't. We are Latinos and we're immigrants. And those things are basically what we're faced with when we leave our countries and when we come here and try to make a better life for ourselves and for everybody that we left behind.
Absolutely. I think that's how we are there. Guatemalans and Latinos in general are so resourceful. All of that background is definitely what was in me once you come here. And then you come here and there's opportunity, you know, to do things. You can get access to all the things, order online. Right?
Yeah.
Online ordering in Guatemala is non-existent almost for some things. But say for the hot sauce, I didn't know how to do this. Like my background is international affairs and film. I had no idea. So I go online, but I was like, yes, just investigate and where do you buy the bottles? Order some bottles and just do it.
Yeah. And so then after you did your las salsas picantes, they're called green belly foods, right?
Green belly foods, yes. So people from Antigua, our nickname is Panza Verdes.
Oh,
Right? So los
okay.
antigueños son panza verde, green bellies, right? And there's many legends of why. I think the biggest reason I think is we eat a lot of avocado, like a lot. In fact, the Hass avocado is an avocado that was developed in Antigua, my hometown.
Oh, okay.
So we eat, I mean, it's like for lunch, everybody.
They fall off the trees.
Yeah, so many. So that's my mother wouldn't have liked it if I called it Maria del Carmen's hot sauce. She would have not been happy. So I was like, what should I call this? And the sauce is green, cilantro, garlic, habaneros, olive oil, apple cider vinegar. little water and salt. In Guatemala, we would use a different pepper called chiltepe, which you can't find here. But I always made it at home and would share it with friends and family, and everybody loved it. I knew it was going to work. So
Yeah.
that's what got us started. Yeah.
Okay. And then from there, you went to Frescos Naturales. Tell us more
Right.
about how that happened.
And it took, I think, maybe 6 years after starting Green Belly. And the hot sauce was so important because that's where I learned everything about the industry. First, how to make a product safely and what do you need to have on a label. I didn't know about nutritional facts or where do you get the UPC codes or even the first 3 months of sauce, I would bottle it raw because that's how my mom's sauce is. And so I would wash everything as best I could. But you need to pasteurize it. And eventually 3 months later, I had bottles exploding. So I was like, okay, no, we have to do it. So it's always all this learning. And then as you start to grow and start to sell, you learn more about the business side, the margins that you need. You start eventually after years of doing it by hand, bottling. 2 years I bottled by hand, around 20,000 bottles is what the estimate we have. But working with my cousin, I had an American cousin who went to business school. And I asked him for help. He started consulting with me, and he recommended we try a co-packer. Now, I didn't have the money. Co-packers are companies that can make big productions for anything that you need, where it's chips, sodas, sauces, jams, peanut butter, whatever. And they have the equipment to bottle. They have big kettles, all these things. They usually require big runs. And what I was doing was much smaller. The smallest run was going to cost us like $6,000. And I didn't have the money. So I couldn't do that jump. And so he helped he had a bigger credit card than I did. So that's how we started with co-packing. And then I learned about that and the costs. And that was all super valuable experience because the drinks, frescos is what in Guatemala we call refrescos. So horchata, todos los frescos, every lemonade, orangeade, Jamaica, the hibiscus drink, all these things that we call them frescos, just for short or whatever. And the idea of frescos got started at home with my son. My son, one summer day that was really hot, I've always made him like Guatemalan food since he was a kid. Frijoles every day, black beans. And Jamaica, the hibiscus, is something that I grew up by the gallon. It's very good, healthy, cheap, bueno, bonito, barato. And I would make it at home. He loved it. And so he comes home, I give him a glass, he pounds it, and he says, you know what you should bottle is this stuff. And that's, boom, it just clicked. I had never thought about it. But he was totally right. Jamaica, for example, is something that all Latinos or the majority of Latinos consume in Latin America and definitely here. It's easy to make, it's super healthy, but it's not in the marketplace. And if it is, it's high fructose corn syrup or artificially flavored when it doesn't have to be. So all you need to bottle Jamaica and make a bottle last 2 years on the shelf, because Jamaica, when you make it at home and you put it in the fridge, just on a pitcher, it goes bad right after 2 weeks.
Okay.
This is the thing. It starts to ferment, for example, other drinks. Well, if I learned with hot sauce how to bottle, you can put anything in a glass and bottle it if you fill it hot. First, you have to cook everything. And it has to have a low pH, not super low, but below 4. So, getting below 4 is not hard. And Jamaica is acidic.
It's acidic.
So it had a golden pH. It was perfect. And at that point, I was like, oh my God, this is going to be huge. We don't know, it's not in the market yet. So I first started in glass. Glass was too expensive. I wanted glass because you could also see the beautiful red of Jamaica. And here's the other thing is, at this point, I already had 3 hot sauces. The third one it's called Yellow Belly, and it's mango, tamarindo, cayenne pepper, and lime juice.
That
really
sounds
good.
good.
But I used the most amazing mango and tamarind that I have ever seen. Like really, the mango comes from India. It's Alfonso mango, amazing mango. And the tamarindo is not like a hard paste like you find at the grocery store, No. It's like the consistency of applesauce, but tamarindo. Incredible. So I knew I had tamarindo already. I knew I had Jamaica, and I had the mango.
Yeah.
So I had the competitive advantage, I think, for these things where I was already sort of in the industry. I knew grocery stores. By then, I was 6 years in. I had Green Belly was in King Supers, which is a big retailer, a grocery store in Colorado, Whole Foods, Natural Grocers, a lot of little stores. I knew co-packers. I knew where to find materials, and all those things I had to definitely, I didn't know before, I had to learn by myself.
Right.
So by the time Frescos came around, it was easy. It was like,
Right.
okay, where do we find this? Boom, boom, boom. Those things, like you said, things that people see as an obstacle for us, for me now, it's like, oh no, you just figure it out. You just gotta, it's not rocket science. You just have to
Right.
find where the things are and get it done. So I started glass was too expensive. So that was 2018. 2019, I tried doing it in cans. And when we went to cans, I had a friend actually that the guy that had made my hot sauce was now working at a place that did canned tea. So I call him, Mexicano, right? I'm
Yeah.
like, yo, Beto, can we do this? Can you think we can bottle Jamaica? And he says, yeah, claro que sí. Bring it over. Let's do it. And that's
Oh.
how it got started. We added a little bit of bubbles because it helps with the preservation of the can. It also bubbles push out on the can, so it makes the cans firm. So not a lot of bubbles, but just a little bit was a good innovation, in aguas frescas kind of thing.
Yeah.
And yeah, that's how it got started. And then, of course, 2020 pandemic hits, right?
Yeah.
So the world didn't know what was going to happen, right? But I was already working the farmer's market with Green Belly with my hot sauce. So at this point, it was like year 7. We were doing 10 farmers markets every weekend from
Wow.
May to October.
Wow.
So when I made the Frescos, I immediately had the 10 best farmers markets that you can do in Colorado.
Right.
With already like a following of people that like the hot sauce. So they trusted our taste.
Yeah.
And so we did really well there. First year, we did 180,000 in sales, and half of that came from the farmers markets, and the other half came from me looking for small accounts like coffee shops, restaurants, breweries, small groceries. So that was also the first time I went out to sell there. I had a hard time starting at the farmers market, but eventually became good at selling at the farmers market. But then you have to go to stores and talk to people. And most of them didn't know what Jamaica was, so, you eventually, you try and you learn from failure. That's been my biggest learning place is when you try and it doesn't work, you always learn.
It's also the attitude, right? Of trying, failing, and then getting up and saying, okay, fine, I failed, but what did I learn? Not everybody has that kind of attitude, and not everybody can stand failing for so long, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm not saying that you failed for so long, but I can, for example.
No. Failure is great.
Yeah.
Failure is so good because it means first you try, you put all your effort. So that's super important. It teaches you, it's called failure, but it's not ultimate failure because you did a lot, you gained a lot. When you get it on the first try, great, you know what I mean? But that also brings risk.
Exactly.
Because if you don't fail, you don't learn.
Yeah.
For example, I remember when my son was little, he was very gifted physically, athletically.
Yeah.
He was very smart, and it was great. He always did very good, but I wanted him to learn also what it is to not win. You need to learn how to lose in order to win.
Right.
It's very important.
Yeah. For me, there's been 2 experiences. Like, I did sports when I was little. I did gymnastics and I did diving. And so for routines, for example, in gymnastics, you always have this routine that you have to do, right? And sometimes the training was you have to do 5 routines without falling off the equipment, right? And then it's like, no, I'm never going to get done, right? And so you're just trying and trying and trying. And that's how eventually you get better. So the day of the competition, it's the one routine that you know that you're going to do, right? But also from my PhD is, I did a PhD in chemistry. chemistry, and 99% of the things that we do in the lab don't work, right? And it's only the 1% that only starts working one day, and then the rest of your PhD is trying to figure out how to make it consistent and to make it continue to work, And so, but that is the point of it, right? Like that.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. For me, it's always been survival, to be honest with you.
Yeah.
And luckily, it wasn't, in a war zone. It could be worse. You know what I mean? But it was about like, how can me and my family make it through?
Yeah, for sure. And so we were talking about how you got started with Frescos Naturales in 2018, right? And then 2019, and then 2020, the pandemic hit. And then I became aware of Frescos Naturales because of a Shark Tank episode that aired earlier this year, right?
Yes. Yeah, you and thousands of other people.
Exactly. So tell us a little bit more about that experience. How do you find out about Shark Tank? And then what was that process like for you to be on the show?
Okay. So it's interesting because as a filmmaker, former filmmaker, I don't have a TV. I would have a monitor, a TV set, but I didn't have cable or I didn't watch television, for a long time. It's maybe been 10 years now. And so people had told me about Shark Tank many years back, even with Green Belly, when I was selling Green Belly, you should apply to Shark Tank. And then definitely when I started selling Frescos and going on the road from Boulder to Denver, making maps and finding coffee shops. And I love these drinks. Like I drink them every day. I have at least 3, like the Jamaica, the Tamarindo, the Mango, the Guayaba Piña. Like I love them. And when I would go out on the street and talk to people, it's infectious. People would see me having my excitement, and a lot of people would always say like, "Oh, you should apply at Shark Tank."
Yeah.
But I always thought as like, "Oh, that's a TV show." It's like it's not accessible to me.
Yeah.
So what ended up happening was 2021. We're coming out of the pandemic, and I decide we were still selling at the farmers markets during the pandemic, right? So the farmers markets were great because it was outdoors, so people could be outside. And so we still did well at the farmers markets and all the vendors as well. So the following year, I was like, I think I can still do this. And it looked like the vaccine was coming. We didn't have it yet for everybody, but the hospitals had it. And so 2021, I decided to go full on Frescos. And first Jamaica for just 3 months. And then in April, we had Tamarindo and Maracuya. And then we had the other 3 flavors finally in September. At first, people were doubtful. When I had one flavor, I would go and sell. It was hard. But once people saw all the other flavors and they're reordering it and people consuming it, they started taking it more seriously. We started doing really well in sales. And I applied to in Boulder, there's an organization called Naturally Boulder. And there's one in Texas called Naturally Austin. It's part of the Naturally Network. They promote the natural food industry, everybody from the makers to the marketers to the co-packers to the people that make boxes to the scientists that do the testing, everything. Really cool. And every year they have a competition, a pitch slam. And I had seen it many times with Green Belly, and I was like, I don't think I can make it. But with Frescos, I knew from the beginning that I never thought about winning, but I was like, I'm going to be there. And it's always really great because you pitch and there's investors. I didn't know anything about investing or companies and how do you grow like that. But I knew that Frescos was a company that was going to need outside money. I started it with Green Belly's credit cards that year in 2021. And in October, I got accepted to the pitch slam and I won. We were the youngest company. We was only 8 months old. All the other companies were like 5 or 7 years old, already in Whole Foods, all these things. But we were innovative, different. And I won this prize. They gave us some money, some cash, but then also like money in services from marketing, legal, financial. And that was the big push. It was also like a validation of people in your industry who are like, wow, this is going to work. So right after winning the pitch slam, I talked to a mentor. She's a woman that has a Scotch company. She's also Latina, is Mexicana and Cubana. She's awesome. And I met her in 2021, I think it was, or 2020, through a program called the Black Ambition Program. It was set up by Pharrell. I was one of the first people in the cohort. I didn't get funding, but we got mentorship.
Right.
And it's based on the idea that like less than 3% of venture funds go to Black and brown businesses, yet we are more than 30% of the consumers.
Yeah.
So Pharrell sets this program up for promoting Black and brown businesses. And that's where I get my mentor. Anyway, so at the pitch slam, before the pitch, I pitched to her on Zoom.
Yeah.
Like, okay, go get him. I win. After winning, we talk. And she says, you should apply to Shark Tank. I think you have a chance. And I had never taken it seriously until she said that.
Yeah.
So I watched an episode and I was like, I can do this, no problem. And so I applied. It was probably November 2021. I didn't hear back from them till like 3 months later. First, they call you, do a phone interview. If you pass that, then it's this big application you have to fill out and many more rounds after that.
Right.
But that's how it got started.
Yeah. And so for me, for example, when I see a company in Shark Tank, I imagine this like successful entrepreneurs that like know it all, and then they're there and they're like, all ready to go, right? But from what you've told me is not necessary. Like everybody knows what they're doing and know their game and have everything straight up,
There's so many parts of it. So many parts of this thing. It's like, okay, one is your product. What are you doing? So you become an expert at like pH and market prices and cans and all these other things, right? And then your packaging. Okay, so your labeling, your nutritional facts, and then the market. Who are you going to sell? What are the margins? All these things. And then, there's so many levels that it's hard for people to know it all, especially starting. And a lot of the people that go to the show, some of them, for example, let's say they have a restaurant. They have some experience. By the time they get there, they have a restaurant or many.
Exactly.
But there's also a lot of people that don't. Maybe the majority are more like me, where they have a small business, more like a startup, really, that's successful, but it's still very small and fragile. For example, we started distribution with Kroger in December. There are only 2 grocery stores. Here in Colorado's King Soopers, 153 stores, and they gave us 23 Ralphs in Los Angeles.
Okay.
That's already so much production, more than I've produced locally ever before. So you have to, do you have the money? I didn't have the money. So then you have to fundraise. And how do you fundraise? And there's so much learning to all of it. You know what I mean? So it can be hard. It's better if you have a team. I don't recommend doing this by yourself. For me, it's the hand I was dealt. It's just me. But most of the people that go there are just your regular person that's trying to start something, which is what's really cool about that show. I have to hand it to them. After participating and seeing it, I think, it's a show that promotes entrepreneurship, and shows people all these different models and all these different examples of people that are very similar to them, not different at all, without the resources.
And I think one of the things that you just said is that it also helps both the audience and the people pitching to start thinking about what are the opportunities, what are the possibilities, right? This guy, was it Mr. Wonderful, that's a complete ass on TV. I don't know if in real person he's that mean, but but he always talks about royalties, right? That's his thing. And like we only started watching Shark Tank like in the last 6 months or something, just because somehow my husband became more interested in learning business terms. And so
it can be really helpful because, it brings, like you said, these business terms that are sometimes so exclusive to a small group of people. Now it brings them to everybody.
Right.
So there is that sort of education on like, well, things that you should be aware of. Because how did the hot sauce started? I have my mom's hot sauce is the best, honestly. So I was like, yes, if we can make this, it'll sell, no problem. Frescos, jamai, all these things are like they're from us. You know what I mean? And everybody has something in themselves, their own ideas of things that they want to do, and you can do it. And I think that show, the best thing about the show really is promoting that.
And when we look at entrepreneurs that go in the show, you see some people that don't get deals, right? For example, when you pitched, Nopalera also pitched, right? And she got a deal and rejected it. She didn't take it. And then you got a deal when you went through the process, right? But some people don't get offered deals either. What kind of impact did it have for you to go on Shark Tank?
Well, the publicity is incredible. Like I could never afford that kind of publicity ever. You know, now I just tell people like, oh yes, we're on Hulu. It's like, what?
Yeah.
That's crazy. You know what I mean? So it gave us exposure. That's the first thing, you know, because what happens is, you know, the show is very real, like in the sense of when you go in front of the sharks, they don't know you. They don't know anything about you. But then what happens after that is a process called due diligence, right? So they have to make sure that what you said is real, that you weren't lying, that your numbers are correct, all these things. And that's when it can get a little bit more, you know, harder. The bar gets raised harder because what happens in the show is they want to know whether they want to, you know, engage with you or not. You know what I mean? I'll give you my example.
Yeah.
In 2022, last year, I actually, so it was the second year of Frescos. I had a very difficult year. The first year was success, sales and no problem and awesome. Second year, two good things happened. I got accepted into Kroger. Wow, incredible. Like not even the hot sauce has been accepted into Kroger, you know?
Wow.
So that's a huge, huge thing. They see the value in what we're making. And then the second part was going to Shark Tank. But I had issues with production. My co-packer, the person that made my product, was going to close their facility and then open a new one. They closed in April. They were supposed to open in August. They didn't open until October.
Wow.
I tried producing somewhere else, and the other co-packer didn't make them correctly. So they didn't pasteurize. So after receiving 4 flavors, 8,000 cans each, so 24,000 cans, 10 days later, the cans started exploding. Oh my God, I know. What do you do? You know?
Oh my gosh.
It was the hardest thing ever. And this happened like a month before going to Shark Tank. So for example, the display on the show, a lot of that, because I was out of product, it was just cans with sparkling water.
Wow.
The cans that the sharks had tasted, the samples, I had to go to stores and buy back the product.
Wow.
So I didn't have any. And it was like, what do? You know, you get given the golden ticket to the chocolate factory, like, and then you go outside, you get on your bike, and you got flat tires.
Yeah.
It was like, oh God. So I juggled the elephants to make it work, and we go, and it was fine. So to them, for example, you know, I pitched them in July what I thought was going to happen in August, but it didn't happen.
Oh.
You know, I had 20,000 in the bank in August. I had 10,000 in September. And in October, I had 2,000.
Oh my gosh.
It was like, and I had cans and ingredients, but I didn't want to try making it somewhere else because it didn't work before.
Yeah.
So I had to just wait. And, you know, in the meantime, I was talking to the sharks. And so it's tricky, you know what I mean? Then they see like, okay, well, maybe you're not quite ready yet to pump you with steroids and explode you yet. You know what I mean?
Right.
So that can happen. And that happened in my situation. I was lucky that at the end of October, finally the place opened and we produced everything. I was out of money. I had the cans, I had the ingredients, like 16,000 cans for each flavor, all 6. I had it. But to produce all of that, it was going to cost 30,000.
Oh man.
And I had 2.
Yeah.
So I said, let's do it. No problem. I'll figure it out. And I applied for a credit line at the bank on November 1st, Dia Todos Santos. And on the 15th, I got it, you know, and boom, you know. And then 2 weeks later, we finally get the Kroger order. So we never shorted them.
Oh, my
and they got fulfilled. But these are the things that can happen to anybody. For me, it was just a matter of time. I knew, I was like, yo, we're going to be fine. Eventually, we'll produce, no problem. But, you know, when you're working with investors that want to do a deal now, you know, it's very important, you know. So right now, we're working with Daniel and his team. They're providing like mentorship mostly and helping me with advice, questions that I have on growth.
Yeah.
Our growth this year has been amazing. Like in the first quarter of this year, we've done 3 times what we did last year.
Wow.
Yeah, so we're doing well, and again, that was such a huge learning
Yeah.
experience
Yeah.
last year.
Right.
All that suffering.
Yeah.
Oh God.
Man, talk about living on the
But
edge.
yeah, and that's, for entrepreneurs, it's like that. At the beginning, all your costs are always up front. So for example, I am applying right now to Whole Foods, right?
Yeah.
So let's say Whole Foods tomorrow says, okay, yeah, let's put you in all the stores. Can you give us all this product in 2 weeks?
Right.
It's like, I mean, and you have to pay for it up front at first. You
Yeah.
know what I mean? You have to pay for your ingredients, you have to pay for your cans, production, and then let's say you make 2 or 3 times your costs.
Yeah.
Well, you don't get that until later, and they're asking for more. So it's difficult. I don't recommend it. Like I said, I got into this, just life put me in it.
Yeah.
It wasn't by choice. It's not like I wanted to do this.
In soccer in Venezuela, there was always this commentator that used to say, "No apto para cardíacos."
Yeah, totally. Yeah, and that's exactly right. Yeah, it's difficult.
Yeah.
It's hard. I only do this because I really love the product. Like my mom's hot sauce, I've shipped that to Japan. I've shipped it to India.
Wow.
Could you imagine India with such amazing cuisine that they have? And this guy who was from Fort Collins, he's like, I want to take it to my family. I've shipped to Europe. So my mom's hot sauce, has made it farther in the world than I have. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Juan personally never really made a lot of money out of it. It paid the bills,
Yeah.
which is all I needed. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's been great, and now with Frescos, like I love this stuff. Like I feel lucky that I landed here, because to make the best Jamaica that you can find in the market in a can, I can die happily.
Yeah.
Like I did a service to Latinos, you know what I mean?
That's true. Yeah, the product is really good. I like it. The taste is great. They're refreshing. And, you only add a little bit of sugar. So they're also not unhealthy.
Super low in
Right.
sugar, like 5 to 10 grams of added sugar. And that's the other thing, is like make a really high quality product that is immigrant, right? So it was a very conscious choice to put the names of the drinks in the front.
Yeah.
In Spanish.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So that people that don't know the product learn.
Yeah.
And the people that, like us, who relate to the product, we feel seen.
Yeah.
And it's something that is ours and it looks beautiful. The thing with immigrant products is there's this assumption that they're always low quality.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Like Chinese goods, they're always low quality. And Mexican drinks, low quality, or Latino drink, and it shouldn't be like that, because very well, Jenny, that where we're from, it's all about quality.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? It's like there's no reason why it should be artificial ingredients and high fructose corn syrup. Like there's a problem with diabetes in our community, and we actually come from a society, our culture, that looks at food as medicine.
And Juan Ignacio, you mentioned that we were talking about how difficult the journey has been, right? But you also shared in the show itself that even with all the troubles, even with all the obstacles that you face as an entrepreneur, nothing really compared to helping your son beat cancer.
Yeah.
Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
It's the hardest, darkest moments of my life. Like I can. Right before this interview, I was writing something about that, kind of talked a little bit about Joaquin's cancer, and I was like, he's about to start to cry. Yeah. I never expected it to happen, Like I said, Joaquin, my son, was the healthiest kid ever, a star football player, soccer, you know what I mean? And skateboarder, like amazing kid. And it was a bone tumor. It's called Ewing sarcomas. It happened on his hip. He was doing tryouts he was trying to get into varsity when he was a sophomore. Yeah. So right before school started, he had some pain. And we thought it was maybe appendicitis, right? So we went to do some x-rays and we didn't see that, but we saw this huge thing. and they sent us to Denver Children's Hospital, and that's where we got the diagnosis. It happens mostly in kids. And luckily, we were in a really good place because it hadn't gone into the bone marrow. It hadn't gone anywhere yet. So it was just there. So we did 7 months of chemo, 1 month of daily radiation. So we started online school before everybody went online.
Yeah.
I've never faced a challenge like that, so lost. You don't know what to do. These drinks are with the hot sauces, you figure it out.
Right.
But this was something that there's nothing I could do.
Yeah.
Nothing except be there to support him and try to be, strong, in the moment and just deal with things in the moment, you know what I mean? And not to think about too much farther into the future because you couldn't see, But I wanted to quit everything.
Yeah.
And, I was like, why are you an entrepreneur?
Right.
Why don't you go get a job at the bank?
Right.
You'd probably make more money, Juan, and it would be more stable, and you won't be dealing with all this bullshit. Sorry.
You're good.
With all these, you won't be dealing with all these problems.
Yeah.
Because basically, when you have your own business, if you don't go to work, it doesn't go,
Right.
So you have to do everything. And so it's hard. And I wanted to quit many times.
Right.
That definitely crossed my mind many times. After the treatment, the tumor was gone, and then he was clean for 10 months.
Yeah.
And then it came back again.
Oh, wow.
Same size, but a lot smaller, and in a place where we could do surgery. But it was just, it's difficult,
For sure.
It's life or death. So it's the first time you confront the possibility of dying. And not you as an adult, but your child, and they're young, 16. It's not fair. And I was very lucky. I had Medicaid, so all of the treatment was free.
Yeah.
Like $2 million treatment here at Denver Children's. Great place also, The second time, it was successful. They were able to do surgery. And then since then, there's been also many surgeries. So it's been difficult. He's doing well. He's in school, in college now here at CU Boulder. He wants to study biology. He wants to be a doctor.
Oh my gosh. Yes.
Yeah, my son is awesome. He's my whole inspiration for everything.
Yeah.
Like I make me want to cry right now.
Well, I mean, I know that you guys have worked really hard to get him to a healthy state. I only asked you because I know that it just shows the character that you have, the resilience as a human being, as a father, as a person that is providing products for the community, thinking about the community while you're going through your personal obstacles, barriers with your family. So it just adds more background to this person that's out there. Like the impression I got from you is, you're just this person like trying to kick ass, like trying to keep your head above water. And it's like, it's a story like we mentioned of many other Latinos out there. And
absolutely,
and it's to see somebody on Shark Tank, right? And see them like we always imagine everybody being super successful. Instagram is a platform where everybody just takes the best pictures, and we always imagine that everybody's happy, right? But the reality never comes through of some people may be thriving, and that might be true for them, but that's not true for everybody, and that's not true for the majority of people, right?
I would say absolutely, definitely. I think for the majority, it's not like that.
Right.
You know what I mean? We only see little bits. And I've always known that, even in all the difficulties that I've had in my life, I've also known that I've had a lot of privileges, and I've been lucky to have a lot of things, and always give thanks for what you have, put it to work.
Yeah. So Juan, if we wanted to buy Frescos and support you and also the hot sauces, where should we go?
Yeah, thank you. So we have right now distribution just in Colorado and Southern California with Frescos, but you can always go on our website 24/7, drinkfrescos.com. We have a 20% discount if you do 2 6-packs or more. And it comes out at like $3.33 a can. I've always wanted to make them affordable. So Just shipping one 6-pack, it's just I can't do it under $25. So, but if you get two, then you get them for 20 each, which is a good deal. And with a hot sauce, same, greenbellyfoods.com. There's my mom's sauce, right? The green one, cilantro, garlic, habanero. But the red belly is a sauce that I make with a pepper from Guatemala that I export and import myself. It has a really like smoky kind of flavor. It's grown by Mayan Kikchi communities in Alta Verapaz, Guatemala. And of course the yellow belly. But yeah, they're delicious. Not super spicy. You're going to love them. Believe me.
Fantastic. Close it off on a positive note. Imagine somebody came to your city, they come to visit and they want you to show them around from the local point of view, but you're not around. So you tell them, okay, you have to do these 3 things if you're in my city.
Denver is a beautiful city. I feel really happy being here. The art downtown is incredible. So there's lots of graffiti art, street art that is really, really cool. I would say the music. Denver has a vibrant music scene. A lot of local bands. Los Mocochetes, they're friends of mine. So tocan cumbia, rock. They're like a Chicano funk band as well. When you come to Denver someday, you and your husband, there is a brewery that's always helped me. It's called Raíces Brewing. It's downtown, close to the Bronco Stadium. They carry the Frescos from day one. They've always been super supportive. 2 friends of mine, una puertorriqueña, Tamil Maldonado, and a Costa Rican guy, Jose. They're really good people. There's always music going on. Siempre entre familia. They love having Frescos because a lot of families come where there's the grandparents, the kids, you know what I mean? So they have non-alcoholic stuff and always music. So now you got a place to go.
For sure. Well, Juan Ignacio, thank you for joining us on the podcast today.
Gracias. No, thank you, Janine. I really appreciate it.
Thank you for listening. If you want to put a face to the voices you just heard, follow us on Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at LatinXcan. If you have questions or feedback, you can email us at latinxcan@gmail.com. And if you want to support our project, please leave a review. We have made it easy for you and added the links to the show notes. That's it for now. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button and remember, unidos somos más.